Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Welcome back. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC-TV18. Well, let's get on to CNBC-TV18 exclusive then. We learned that PS Jayakumar is likely to get an extension as MD and CEO of Bank of Baroda. And Ritu Singh joins us now with more details. Ritu, tell us, what are you picking up?
Speculation has been rife about where Mr. PS Jayakumar will head once his term at Bank of Baroda comes to an end. But we're given to understand from sources that the government will grant an extension to Mr. PS Jayakumar to continue as the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Bank of Baroda for at least another year. Remember, his term was set to end in October of this year, and he was in one of those rare instances a private banker was appointed as the head of a public sector bank by the government in 2015. Now, of course, the extension, according to our sources, is for at least 1 year, but it could be for a longer period of time. Under Mr. Jayakumar, the bank has suffered from the same ailments as the rest of the banking industry. However, in the last quarter, the bank was able to report a profit of about 528 crore rupees, but gross NPLs have still remained elevated at above 12% for Bank of Baroda. But all said and done, Mr. Jayakumar will, it seems, likely stay on as the head of the bank for at least another year.
Well, Ajay Piramal is open to an acquisition of big domestic pharma company at a reasonable valuation as his non-compete with Abbott expires in September. Piramal is looking for a niche player when it comes to the export market and is also eyeing smaller OTC targets to grow his pharma business. CNBC-TV18's Nisha Podar caught up with Ajay Piramal. Here's what he had to tell us.
If we find that there are businesses that we can acquire which will have a long-term value creation potential and which we can get at a reasonable valuation, we will definitely do that. So we are examining it, but we have not come to any definite term potential in it.
And how much of your kitty would you set aside for any such inorganic growth in pharma?
So I don't think funding is a constraint. So it depends on the opportunity. Right. If we think it's worthwhile, then we will adequately fund it.
Mr. Piramal, you know it better than me that Indian pharma companies have been saddled by not just pricing pressure but also US FDA concerns. Some of them have succession issues as well, and management bandwidth is also lacking in some of them. Do you think that some of those big pharma companies or sizable pharma companies also, they will be also on your radar?
The gains and the advantages that Indian pharma in the export had for generic exports is no longer there. That's why if you look at our own strategy of pharma has always been to get niche, complex products for export. But for the simple generic oral solid dosage products, I think that market is highly competitive and not so profitable. So that's not something we are looking at. We would look at the domestic, and if there are even larger companies that want to exit out, I mean, we are open to that.
Okay. And what about the valuations currently? Even though the markets fell and the overall performance of the companies came down, a lot of investors say that in terms of valuations, the market capitalization of most of the pharma companies which are struggling is still on the higher level. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so rather than be, this is a very general statement, but yes, there are some valuations which are high. That's the challenge when we have to, when we are looking at acquiring. Unless and until we find that there is a reasonable valuation or a valuation that we think in the long term we can create significant value, only then would we invest in.
You have looked at several assets, several OTC brands, but you have always found the valuations unattractive. How are they poised right?
So we have actually done acquisitions in OTC. We have not done the really mega acquisitions, but we have been growing OTC. What we're doing in OTC is actually what we did in the domestic market earlier. We are building on our sales, we are building on our distribution, so that we have the pipe ready for introducing new products, and we could introduce products either through our own development, which we are doing, or through acquisition of smaller products.
Okay, so open for acquisitions. That's the word coming in from Ajay Piramal.
Well, after weeks of incessant rains that wreaked havoc, Kerala is finally breathing a sigh of relief. Now, with the red alert withdrawn, the rescue operations take a backseat. However, greater challenges of reconstruction and rehabilitation of the state lie ahead, with nearly around 8 lakh people residing in relief camps.
Now, the state's infrastructure has almost collapsed. The state government is pegging initial losses at around 20,000 crore rupees, but that's just an initial estimate. We approached the Kerala Chief Minister to know more on the impact and losses due to the flood fury. Here's what he told us in a video statement.
As of now, 357 lives have been lost since the monsoons began. Over 26,000 homes have been damaged or destroyed. Crops spread over 40,000 hectares have been lost. We have lost more than 2 lakh poultry and at least 46,000 milch animals. Floods have washed away many shops and commercial establishments.
And as Kerala struggles with the loss of lives and livelihood, sources in the central government say that they have no proposal for a natural calamity cess to fund the relief operations. Sapna Das is here with more details. Sapna?
Well, there's absolutely nothing on the table as far as the finance minister of the centre is concerned in terms of any demand being raised for a natural calamity cess. Government is also pretty much clear that under the existing GST law, the GST Council has the power to go ahead and kind of implement or take such kind of decisions. But more critical at the moment is that there is no such demand on the table as of now. Nobody has raised this issue that there should be a natural calamity cess, a new cess should be levied in order to take care of huge calamities like the Kerala floods, etc. The other aspect that Finance Ministry is also very clear about is that there is no paucity of funds as far as sending or funding the relief operations for natural calamities is concerned. For example, there is enough available under the Prime Minister's Relief Fund. There's also enough available in the central government budget, which is basically through the National Disaster Response or Relief Fund. FY19 outlay is around 10,000 crores as of now. Apart from this, the states also have a mechanism called the State Disaster Relief Fund. This was somewhere around 9,800 crores when the current financial had opened. After some usage being done by states, this amount has now come down to around 51,100 crores. But all said and done, there is no paucity of funds. This is the clear-cut message from Finance Ministry. As and how there's a natural calamity cess demand that comes up, definitely government would kind of examine it in its proper perspective. That work will be done by the GST Council. Last but not the least, probably not too much in favor of a cess, simply because, once a cess comes in, like for example, earlier also there was a 1% calamity cess probably during the NDA one's time. So that cess was there for quite a long time. So it's not a short-term measure that you do it for 3 months or 4 months or 6 months. And it has to be across a broad spectrum of goods and services. It cannot be done on a very selective basis. So any kind of decision that will be required on this, if at all there is a demand at any point in time, will have to be done in a proper perspective. As of now, there's nothing on the table.
Thank you, Sapna, for that. But let's talk about some news from the world of sports then, because it was a historic day for India at Asian Games 2018. Because on day 2, as Vinesh Fogart won India's first ever women's wrestling gold. Fogart won India a gold medal when she beat Yuki Iri of Japan in the final of the women's wrestling. Vinesh defeated Yuki 6-2 in the 50 kg category to bag the top prize and take India's tally of gold medals to 2 at the 18th edition of the Asian Games in Indonesia.
Well, and there's more good news, this time on the cricketing front. Virat Kohli has scored his 23rd Test century as India dominate the 3rd Test against England. India had set England a mammoth target of around 521 runs for a win in Trent Bridge on day 3. The men in blue, they started the day on a 124 for 2, but it was a 113-run partnership between captain Virat Kohli and Cheteshwar Pujara for the 3rd wicket that pushed England out of the game. Pujara was dismissed for around 72 runs. After Virat Kohli's dismissal for 103, Hardik Pandya, he hit 52 runs in 52 balls. That helped India's lead stretch past the 500-run mark. The men in blue eventually declared, setting England a target of around 521 runs. England, they were 23 for no loss at stumps on day 3. Anisha, this one should be ours, I think.
Oh yes, after the stupendous performance that we saw from Pandya and Kohli, it will be disappointing if we don't win this one.
Oh, we must win this one. You know, after the first 2 tests, going 2-0 down, I was counting on my boys bouncing back, and just take a look at the way they bounced back. Fabulous.
Let's hope they bag this one. Well, let's take a status check of what's happening in the world of commodities and currencies. And Manisha Gupta, as always, joins us for more. Manisha, good morning. A lot of action in the currency and commodity space this morning.
Oh, well, absolutely. And much of that really is coming in from the comments that the U.S. president made yesterday, where he clearly shows his displeasure about interest rate hikes from the U.S. Fed. And that has led to the U.S. dollar declining quite sharply. So if you look at the dollar index, that fell nearly 0.5% overnight. And that has helped many other currencies in the Asian market today. And that has led to many of the commodities gaining as well. So crude oil prices, of course, is one of that, where we have seen strong gains continue. Markets also are watching out for the Iran sanction supply impact into the global markets. So yet another day when you have seen gains continue. Same is the case for the metal space. You have gold prices come back all the way towards 1200. Most of the base metal prices gained up overnight, and we have started Shanghai on a positive note as well.
Okay, all right. Thanks so much for that, Manisha. Well, let's tell you what's going on in the derivatives market then. Mangalam's with us. Mangalam, India's on top in England. But tell us, what's the cues coming in from the derivatives market?
That's right. You know, India's on top of England. Perhaps looks like from the derivatives market, bulls are on top of bears as well. But it's a holiday tomorrow, so let's run the viewers with the data quickly. One thing that really stands out is that the FIs, they continue to sell in index futures despite the Nifty making record highs. So yesterday too, there was a sell figure of about 120 odd crore rupees. But again, the heartening fact is the Nifty futures premium expanded. So some people are definitely buying. The FII long exposure now stands at 51%. At the start of the week, the start of the previous week, it was at around 57, 58%. So more shorts in the system, that is a good thing. What really stood out yesterday was the action in index options. Yesterday, the FIIs, they sold about 400 crores in index options. Out there was put selling of close to around 13,600 odd contracts. That tells you that, you know, the Nifty not breaking 11,500 will be very, very important, because that's where we saw a lot of put writing. Add to that, the maximum open interest range, that one moved. Earlier, we've been talking about how the maximum open interest was that 11,000 put and 11,500 call mark. That has moved higher, substantially higher, to 11,400 put as well as 11,600 calls. So the support has come much above what it was earlier. 11,500 and 11,600 put see some writing. At the same time, 11,500 call writers, they ran a bit for cover. In terms of stocks to watch out for, keep an eye out on Adani Enterprises as well as Jet Airways. They are out of FNO ban. Add to that, we saw some long positions added on Divis as well as TVS Motors. Both those stocks were running yesterday. A lot of short positions added on Federal Bank. So let's see whether they get follow through, or perhaps there is case for short covering.
Okay, Mangalam, thank you so much for that. So he mentioned a couple of stocks that you need to keep an eye out on, but for more stocks that will be in focus, Sonal is joining us to tell us more. Sonal, good morning. Over to you.
Good morning, Anisha. Well, some of the aviation stocks will be in focus because the aviation traffic data has come out, and the growth has been around 20.8% in July 2018 on a YY basis. Remember, this is on a base of 12% growth that we saw last year in July 2017. Now, some internals in terms of load factors. Spice did top the charts again with a load factor of around 93.5%, followed by Indigo at 89% in the listed space, and by Jet Airways at around 84%. But in terms of market share, Jet Airways plus Jetlight has been seeing a decline in the market share that has come in at 15.1% in July 2018. That compares with a market share of 16.6% in January 2018. Interglobe, however, on the other hand, has seen a market share increase to around 42.1% in July. That compares with 39.5% in January of 2018. There are also reports, now GMR will also be in focus, because there are reports that GMR Airport is in talks to raise funds and buy out PEs, and it is eyeing around $500 million from Aeon through a mix of debt and equity. However, these are just reports, and CNBC